Texas seek recognition.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk, amendment number 199.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas. At the end of the bill, before the short title, insert the following: Limitation on use of funds. Section: None of the funds made available in this act may be used to limit outreach programs administered by the Smithsonian Institution.
Pursuant to House Resolution 333, the gentlelady from Texas and a member opposed each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Texas.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Again, let me offer my appreciation to the gentlelady from Minnesota, the gentleman from California, and their staff who work with us. Let me remind my colleagues that just a few days ago, I offered this amendment dealing with museums and dealing with my concern for the funding in the Smithsonian to provide for the nation's museums. Let me also say to my colleagues that I've offered this amendment in the past because I have a particular interest in the museums of America and their ability to do outreach. I imagine I am not alone standing here amongst appropriators to again say and call for the end of sequestration, to be able to provide the appropriators and to provide the people of America the full funding to address these quality of life issues from the various lands and federal parks and land, and as well the historic trails, of which I'll talk about, but museums, urban reforestation, all elements of the beauty of this nation. And I frankly believe that museums likewise are that form of beauty. My amendment specifically says none of the funds made available in this act may be used to limit the outreach programs administered by the Smithsonian. In order to fulfill the Smithsonian's mission, the increase and diffusion of knowledge, the Smithsonian seeks to serve an even greater audience by bringing the Smithsonian to enclaves of communities who otherwise would be deprived of the vast amount of cultural history offered by the Smithsonian. Our museums of the nation are in trouble. The Smithsonian has a beautiful array of museums that are here that millions of Americans have the opportunity to visit. But the outreach program serves millions of Americans, thousands of communities, and hundreds of institutions in all 50 states through loans of objects, traveling exhibitions, and sharing of educational resources via publications, lectures, and presentations, training programs, and websites. Allow me to mention just a few in my own district. The Holocaust Museum, unique in its presentation of a horrible time in history, but it also serves as a very unifying entity in our community. The Children's Museum, as one of the original board members and founders, now the Children's Museum is one of the major children's museums in the nation. But again, it needs the impact of the outreach of the Smithsonian. And then, of course, the African American Museum, headed by a dear friend, but also a champion of holding this museum together, and that is John Guest. He needs a fuller embrace by the Smithsonian, including its expertise, its experts, its PhDs, traveling efforts, and again, its encouragement of corporate communities to recognize the value of participating in museums. The Smithsonian outreach activity includes the institution traveling exhibition, the Smithsonian Center for Education and Museum Studies, National Science Resources, the Smithsonian Institution Press, the Office of Fellowships, the Smithsonian Associates. Who are we if we do not value preserving those items that tell the varied and diverse history of America, the good history of America, the history that is unifying and purposeful in citing us as a country that recognizes our wonderful diversity. So I ask my colleagues to support this amendment that deals specifically with allowing the outreach to the kinds of museums that really need the help of the Smithsonian. With that, I reserve my time.
Later reserves. Does any member wish to rise in opposition to this amendment? The gentlelady from Texas is recognized.
The Smithsonian, in concluding, Mr. Chairman, is very important to urban areas and rural areas alike, and its ability or its affiliation is to build a strong national network of museums and educational organizations in order to establish active and engaging relationships with communities throughout the country. Again, allow me to salute in particular John Guest with the African American Museum in Houston. He has literally put that museum together along with his board members. The Smithsonian, I hope they're hearing me as I'm talking on the floor of the House. We need your help in Houston, Texas. We probably need your help in Washington State, in California, Minnesota, New York, and beyond to preserve and help these small museums throughout the nation. I ask my colleagues to support not only this amendment, but the museums of this nation. And I say to Mr. Calvert, we had discussed this before. This amendment now is a placeholder, hopefully, for our discussion going forward, dealing with the preservation of our museums.
Gentlelady's time has expired.
Let me thank Mr. Calvert and Simpson and McCullough, and then also I yield back asking for support of the
Gentlelady's time has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Texas. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.